let's turn this table into something fresh. First thing I did was I used this paint stripper. I put a large amount on just to make sure it would work really well. Now, I can't say I was impressed really with this particular one. Spread it all out. I just used one of these little sponges on a stick because that's what I had. Now, they do say to wrap it with plastic and keep it moist. So I used this magic bag because I happen to be getting rid of it anyway. After about 30 minutes, I took it all off, scraped the paint or the varnish into a box just to keep the cleanup nice, and then washed it down with a scrubby and warm water. After that, I went over it with a nice clean cloth and did the same on the other side. Went to work with the sander. This palm sander did nothing but irritate me. The sandpaper, as you can see, just kept coming off and coming off and coming off so many times I couldn't even show you. So eventually, after getting frustrated with it, I just went to hand sanding. I used a coarser 40 grit sandpaper, and then I went up from there. While I was trying to figure out my next move, I didn't really want to purchase another sander until I did some research. But eventually, after a day or two, I did go and borrow a sander from a friend. Now, this tack cloth works really nicely to get all the sand off and leaves the surface nice and smooth. Then I went to work taking off the legs. Now, these legs, I think, and the skirt of underneath the desk table, I'm going to call it a desk because it's what I'm using it for, I think is made with that ebony type of paint because this table was originally made in Indonesia. So make sure you put your nuts and bolts in a safe spot. Now I got to work using my hands again and a coarse sandpaper, and then I finally got this Ryobi orbital sander from a friend with the hook and loop sandpaper, and it worked really nicely. I did all the surfaces on the outside that were going to be seen. I didn't bother on the inside under the table because no one was going to see it anyway. And I could have taken the skirting off, but I didn't really have the ways and means to put it back on. So I just went ahead and just sanded everything, made sure that it was nice and smooth. This top surface had quite a few little blemishes in it. So I didn't get it perfect, but I definitely got it better. Now these legs, as well as they are sanded, still have some sheen on it. And my plan was to go with a light creamy color on the legs, like a chalk paint. So I had to go over them again and again. Use some of the leftover hook and loop from the orbital sander to try to get all those little surfaces. Now I did pull out my little detailed sander and it did help a little bit, but those rounded surfaces on those legs are difficult. So you have to just really get in there with everything you got to get the glaze off. I didn't have to sand it all the way. I just had to sand the shine off. And then, of course, when you're starting to get to the painting part, you have to clean up really well. So I did vacuum off with the shop vac all the main dust bits, put new paper down. Then I taped off the area that I wanted to go white or the cream color. This is not a primer, actually. I tried to get away with using a spray chalk paint, the Rust-Oleum. I was really hoping to get good coverage with 2 coats of this stuff. But in essence, it acted as a primer. So just a nice quick coat if this is the way you want to go. This project would probably take you 2 cans of this stuff if this is how you want to roll. Now, once I was done the skirting part that was going to be seen, I also did the legs, but I did it into a cardboard box, so then that way I could keep the spray contained. Now, I did have doors open, and a mask, so safety first. Put tape around the threads so that I'm not making a big mess I can't go back from. And just went over nice and light. Tried to be thorough though. You don't want to be gobby. And just kept moving it around. And moving it around. And after a good coat, I did the rest of them. And all in total, I did 2 coats. Now 2 coats plus that skirting took that whole can. Now you can see there's still some spots here that are not great. And it didn't get that little inside. So I decided I wasn't going to do another can. Those cans are over 20 bucks. So I tack cloth after light sanding. And I got a new product. Went over all of the legs thoroughly and found this product here, which was amazing. This mineral paint needs very, very little paint, and this brush was luxurious to use. It really spread things out. So I used this Pelican container and a velour roller. Now, I'm showing you the inside of that container because I was instructed to use so little that what you'll see that I put in that container was probably 1/4 of a cup, maybe a third, very little. And that I was able to roller out and do the first coat on all of it. Now, keep in mind that the original spray of that chalk paint would have probably been more or less a primer coat, I guess. So if you were just putting this on straight, you might have to use a little bit more. But the coverage was so good. I tried to roller as much as I could and use the brush for the inside parts of the legs. I have no idea why I have a brush in my mouth like that. Now, can you see the difference? Oh my God, such a difference. Now I'm doing the second coat, and that was only the first coat with that difference. Very, very little, as you can see. Again, rollering it on. This is the second coat. Rollering the legs as much as I can. Brushed it out with the brush. Now this mineral paint is also water-based, so it was really nice to work with. And you can see it's pretty nice. So happy. So take the paint off the threads. Beautiful. Now I had let this dry for probably a couple of days, and then I took off the paper that was protecting the raw wood on the top, because my vision was to have that kind of a really light gray tone to modernize it. So I took all of that off. I didn't bother doing anything on the inside because no one's going to see it. Then I used the tack cloth just to make sure there's no lint or dust or imperfections anywhere that I didn't want in the paint. And then I taped off the skirt because I didn't want to take the skirt off. Now, if you really want to do a nice job, you take the skirt off and you do the whole bottom section. I have a lazy way of doing things, so this was going to work for me. Now, I tried this product. It's Osmo. A friend of mine is actually with the company in Ontario, and I've heard nothing but good things. So I thought, well, let's give it a try. I had a hard time finding it, but I found this lovely gray. Don't know if you can hear the dog in the background. Anyway, I applied the stain with a cloth because I didn't want to use a brush. This actually has to be cleaned up with mineral spirits or paint thinner. So I thought I would just make everything disposable. So after applying the stain on all the surfaces, I did wait for about 5 minutes, maybe a little bit longer. Wasn't sure how well it was going to take, and I just wanted like a hint of the gray on the wood. I wanted the wood to be the main stay, not the stain. And that worked out really, really well. I put 2 coats of this on in this way. So I didn't show the second coat being placed on, but there were 2 coats placed on of the stain. So you put it on, you wait the 5 minutes or so. I wiped it off with a clean cloth. I did a little section at a time because I didn't want to do too large of a space when I did the bottoms, and then I recoated it again after the next day. So you got to give time in between your coats if you want to do more coats. And then when that was done, I applied 2 coats of the varnish with a nice brush. This brush was actually really nice too. I bought both these things at Windsor Plywood here in BC. It is a little expensive, but it did go a long way, and the results were really stunning. So a light sanding, one of the finest grits I could find in between the varnish coats. And use the tack cloth to clean it off. And then the second coat. Now, once it's totally dry, one thing I've learned is to use a bit of a paper bag to, again, go over it like a sandpaper, and that just helps to really, really make things smooth. So if you run your hand over everything, you can kind of feel where there's some catches, and this will smooth all of that out. And now it's time to assemble. Man. So now I have this edge where some of the paint came off from the tape. I reapplied just to touch up along the skirting where that happened. This area is not going to be seen anyway. So unless someone comes into my home and looks at this with a real fine-tooth comb and a magnifying glass, no one's going to see it. So now I put all the table legs back together. Fairly easy. You just have to remember how you dismantled it in the beginning. I tightened them all up. And this is the finished product. Looks pretty darn nice. Just that hint of gray, legs, fresh look. Looks pretty good. And here it is in its space. Thanks for watching.